This episode of the Flush Podcast is brought to you by North Dakota Tourism, Federal Premium Ammunition, Onyx Hunt, Chief Upland, Huron, South Dakota, and by Grain Belt Premium Beer. Today we're doing a deep dive into America's 2021 pheasant hunting forecast with Tom Carpenter, editor of the Pheasants Forever Journal. Tom just launched their state-by-state pheasant hunting guide. We'll go through each state to help you prepare for the upcoming season.
The Flush. So fast, it hardly seems real. So vivid, the moment freezes in time before erupting in a blur of spurs and feathers. It's why we changed the way upland loads are built with Prairie Storm. Exclusive flight control flex wad technology and a mix of copper-plated lead and flight stopper pellets combine to create dense, deadly shot streams through any choke. Longer shots, more power, fewer missed birds. Only from Federal.
If you're looking for a great bird hunting destination this season, then I strongly recommend that you consider one of my favorite places to hunt. That's North Dakota. North Dakota is a bird hunter's paradise. You can hunt both waterfowl and upland birds all in the same day. Ducks and geese in the morning, pheasants, sharp-tailed grouse, and Hungarian partridge in the afternoon, or vice versa. North Dakota has a population estimate of 2.9 million breeding ducks, which is 19% above the long-term average. And the Prairie Pothole region is smack dab in the middle of the Central Flyway. Last week, Mike Jensen joined this show, and we talked in depth about North Dakota's bird numbers. He shared where they saw an increase in pheasants, sharp-tailed grouse, and Hungarian partridge, and where the drought hurt this year's production. You can go back to last week's episode to find out where he recommends lacing up your hunting boots this fall. North Dakota has approximately 800,000 acres of private land open to public walk-in hunting. For the latest plots guide, visit the North Dakota Game and Fish Department. Bag your limit this fall in North Dakota. Visit legendarynd.com to start planning your hunting adventure today.
The wild is calling. Answer your thirst for adventure with Grain Belt Premium Beer. Bring the Grain Belt to the outdoors with their limited edition premium hunting season pack. It's available anywhere you can find premium 12-pack cans of Grain Belt.
Welcome to another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank. I'm your host. Brandon Morton once again brings this production to you. Brandon, as always, thank you for sharing your talents with us. Last week, we broke down North Dakota's upland bird hunting forecast. Today, we're focusing on pheasants, and we're covering the entire country. Since I can't do a good job of that without a knowledgeable sidekick, I brought in Tom Carpenter from Pheasants Forever to help me do the heavy lifting. Tom, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Travis.
Well, I always appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy man. You've got a lot going on. And, hey, it's hunting season. Have you been out in the field yet?
Yeah, I've been out quite a bit, and I'm heading out again tomorrow for the a prairie grouse extravaganza. But I've been to North Dakota already this year for their sharp-tail opener for a multi-day hunt. I've hunted ruffed grouse in Minnesota on their opener, and now I'm heading back out starting tomorrow on a big tour of Minnesota, South Dakota, and North Dakota, all focusing on prairie grouse. So that's the name of the game for me in September is grouse and actually focusing on the prairie.
Well, would you mind, I mean, you don't have to give specifics unless you want to, but would you mind saying, what you've seen so far or talking about numbers or habitat in the places you've already been?
Yeah, it's funny. You say you don't have to say where you were. I was on a podcast with Bob St. Pierre from Pheasants Forever, and he always sort of laughs. And I said, I'm going to tell you where I was hunting, and I said it was east of Fargo, it was west of Glasgow, Montana, it was south of the Peace Garden entrance into Canada, and it was north of Mott and Aberdeen. So. But it was, I thought it was a good opener in North Dakota for the sharptails. I don't know if the right word is surprised, but I was pleased at the bird numbers that we found. one worked for birds, but there were definitely, I thought, as many birds as last year.
Okay.
It was good hunting. Dog got a lot of points. We worked hard. It's not like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, you're done
Mm-hmm.
in a couple hours, which is probably the way we all want some middle ground, right?
Yep.
You don't want to hunt for 10 minutes and you don't want to hunt for 10 hours. And I thought it was a pretty good middle ground. We had a lot of fun. Got some birds. It was all sharp-tail hunting and a few huns. I think there were more huns than I thought there were going to be. The drought didn't seem to, at least at this point, didn't seem to have a huge effect on bird numbers. Of the grouse I got, I would say that, not to get into numbers, but probably 80% of them were young of the year birds, which you sort of want to see and
Mm-hmm.
expect.
Yep. That's a
Those,
good sign.
yeah, those older birds are smarter and cagier anyway, and it was good. It was real good. So we might swing back through North Dakota at the end of this extravaganza that I'm leaving for this week.
Nice. Well, I've heard basically what you just said from several other hunters in North Dakota and parts of Montana as well. Which Hungarian partridge. That's a bird that continues to pop up in the surprise category for a lot of hunters, which I love. I love that bird, but they seem to be able to handle tough conditions pretty well. And then obviously sharp-tailed grouse. They were here before us. They'll be here after us, I hope. And they have handled a lot of these conditions. And the hunting uh, results are showing that, and that's encouraging for a lot of people that are looking forward to heading out into the field that haven't been yet. And what about your rough grouse hunting? What did you see there?
I'll just briefly touch back. You mentioned something important about sharptails and about their native, and they've dealt with drought for thousands, tens of thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we get into the pheasant forecast part of our discussion, we might find that the dry conditions are starting to hit pheasants harder than they have hit prairie grouse. Also think about where prairie grouse reside. They're more in the rangeland, the pasture land, the grazing land, the native grasslands than the more ag-oriented pheasants.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little better equipped to deal with drought, and that's why we're seeing better numbers on them. I think ruffed grouse it's always hard to tell that first weekend.
Yeah.
Lark and I had a great hunt. I noticed the birds were really walking around. Maybe I wasn't getting there fast enough. Ruffed grouse are a challenging game for any dog, especially for a pointing dog. And Lark is experienced enough now. She's figured out you point a grouse as soon as you smell it. With pheasants, pointing dogs and flushing dogs to get them in the air have to be pushy. With grouse, especially with the pointing dog, they have to back off and be careful. And we found grouse. We had good points. We ended up getting one grouse on the day, shot at 3, but leaves are always the wild
Right.
card at this
Yep.
time of year. And the grouse I actually got, I was swinging on, and it was going behind the leaves, and I just kept swinging and shot and got it. But there are other ones where I couldn't do that, So I thought, and we were in central Minnesota. We weren't in the prime pheasant range, but we're in a place where it's a pretty good gauge of what grouse numbers are going to be. And I thought they were about like last year. It happens to be a spot where probably for 20 years we take the same circuit every year
Mm-hmm.
on this land, and it's not scientific, but it is sort of it's a benchmark. And I thought, yeah, there's about the number of birds here last year. We did see woodcock too, which was fun.
Nice.
You can't shoot them that first weekend, and I think everybody who loves woodcock, like I do, are a little worried about what is this dry weather going to do. It may or may not have affected their hatch and their reproduction, but it's sure going to affect their tendency to stop off and how long they're going to stay as they migrate through, because they need those moist conditions for their foraging.
Well, I think most hunters can appreciate the challenge that comes along with that, the unknowns. I think that's what keeps us going back. I mean, like you said earlier, we don't want it to be a 10-minute hunt. We probably don't want it to be a 10-hour tromping out there to try to find one, but somewhere in that middle. And what we don't know yet is probably what excites us about hitting the woods or hitting the fields this season. So with that, why don't we jump into the pheasant forecast? That's what I think we want to focus on right now, because we've got a lot of ground to cover. And I think before we do that, you and I were talking a little while ago about the drought. Before we get into each state, let how would you like to introduce the drought into this hunting season across the entire country?
It's sort of funny. I'm going to use some lines I've written, some thoughts I've developed
Okay.
as I've written about this pheasant forecast, because they're sort of the crystallization of these 22 states. There's like 7 or 8 core pheasant states. That's probably, I would guess, where we're going to sort of focus our discussion. But for Outdoor Life was going to use our pheasant forecast. I wrote a story for them. They're going to link to Pheasants Forever's forecast. I wrote, you had to be living under a rock or a shower spigot to not realize that across much of the core pheasant range, dry weather in late spring turned into the prospects of a drought by early summer and devolved into a downright extreme situation by late July and August. Now, that drought varied in intensity back and forth and up and down across the pheasant range, but it's true. And then I also wrote, and this came from the Pheasants Forever forecast, and I think it's as clear as I can say it. Among circles of upland hunters, there are, and this is in relation to the drought, there are always your Eeyores. We all know Eeyore, the negative donkey. It's all over, and there ain't no pheasants left crowd.
Yep.
And then there's your Pollyannas. They're the quit your worrying, it's going to be just fine crowd. The truth is, we're somewhere in the middle, and that to me, that means a couple things. It means, one, there's going to be birds this fall to hunt, and we're going to get into the states. Conservation is local, bird numbers are local. Somewhere got some thunderstorms, and other place didn't. Some places got Hayden grazed, which is something we have to talk about. Some didn't. But in the end, every state is going to have some good bird hunting, and we'll get into those details. But what we also have to think about in drought is the long-term effects. And one of the effects of a drought is, early in a drought, game birds do well. Why? Because it's warm, it's dry, there's residual cover on the landscape, they have a good hatch, they maybe get to raise those chicks up, and there's more birds on the landscape. What's worrisome about a drought is what happens to the habitat and what the habitat is like going into winter. And especially what happens next spring when there's less of that habitat and less quality on the landscape. So those are sort of some thoughts as we start to talk about what's going on in these states. And we'll be talking about, there's birds. You better be going and hunting, because if you use the drought as an excuse not to hunt, you're going to miss out. Right. But we also have to think about the long term, and that always comes back to habitat and Pheasants Forever and what Pheasants Forever does. But we'll talk about that toward the end.
Right. Yeah. And I'll relay that too. I was talking to a hunter in Montana about a month ago, and he was talking to a biologist that worked for the state, and the biologist essentially said, shoot them up, because the habitat is so decimated by the drought that anything that makes it to winter probably won't make it through winter, is kind of what was on his mind, which is something that I've thought about quite a bit over the last few weeks, that, what we see this hunting season might still be pretty darn good, actually. It's just what we have moving forward might change because of what could happen this winter if it gets bad. My observations, my time in the field so far this season has been that the cover's thinner. Kind of overall, I would say, even in areas that got some pretty good moisture. Cattails are still cattails, so I think we're going to be just fine there for the pheasants. But some of those prairie areas, I just feel like the grass is a little thinner and not quite as tall either. So that's my own take on it, I guess. Do we want to jump in? Let's start in Minnesota. We live in Minnesota. We have a lot of listeners in this state. So you want to dissect Minnesota for us? Well, actually, first, how do you get this information? Where does it come from?
Well, if you go to pheasantsforever.org and you'll see on our top banner the pheasants forecast leads it for now. You can click and go to the pheasant forecast. It's like no other upland report in the world, and it has had various iterations over the years, but it all comes down to on the ground reporting and factual insights in reporting from a variety of writers concentrating on different states, concentrating on each state. We assign writers, trusted writers for each state. Most of them come right from within each state. And they contact a variety of sources, from the state biologists to Pheasants Forever biologists and staff, to other managers in the field. And no forecast is a forecast isn't science like real science is a science, but a forecast is science in the way that you go at it and you try and get the best information you can from people who know, rather than making guesses. So nothing in these forecasts is a guess. It all comes together by hard work and hard factual reporting on what's going on in each state. So that's how it works. They're written reports, and deliveries like this podcast help get the word out for what it is, and we're happy to summarize what's going on in each state. But there's nothing like going to the forecast itself as well and reading it.
I was just to jump in. I was just gonna add to that. We'll give a summary in each state because we'd be here for hours if we really broke down everything that has been written. You guys have done a tremendous job about posting information about each state, breaking down exact locations within the state, showing numbers, roadside counts, information. So I would encourage anybody to go to pheasantsforever.org to get even more information after this show. But let's do that summary for each state. Is that good with you?
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. So let's go with Minnesota. Traditionally the southern half, if you're looking at the state, the west is popular. Southwest, there are some areas that, and I have filmed an episode with Bob St. Pierre a couple of years up in Otter Tail County. That's a really kind of a sleeper location, but bird numbers up there have held on strong. You're on the edge of the pheasant belt up there, but what have you seen from Minnesota specifically?
Well, we had, drought was serious here. It became a little less serious in August when some rains came late August. But I think the drought did not impact Minnesota's pheasants as much as was feared. I think and I was maybe a little of an Eeyore as things were developing over the summer. But I think the reality is this, and there is science behind this, is that, and we'll talk about Iowa too, that we are a little farther here in Minnesota and Iowa, a little east of that core of the Dakotas and Montana, and even Kansas and Nebraska to some extent, in that we are a little more humid even when it's dry. And the habitat perhaps came through a little better. We also had those warm and dry conditions for the hatch. So when you look at Minnesota DNR's pheasant roadside survey, which is of course a key component of how we forecast as well, And it was funny as, Minnesota never comes out with their roadside survey until after Labor Day because, they do the surveys in August. They have to tabulate, they have to create. It's just the time it's always been out. But we start talking to people in August. It was funny. I actually wrote Minnesota's forecast.
Yep.
It's my home state. And it was funny. Every person I talked to, almost to a person, and to a couple of them are actually roadside. They work the DNR roadside survey, and you can even the Minnesota DNR survey itself says that our pheasant numbers may be a little understated in their roadside report, and that the conditions during the survey days were very challenging because it was so dry. And pheasants didn't have to come out to the roadsides to get out of wet grass, which is what really drives these roadside surveys. They survey on multiple days. So bottom line is the forecast is good in a relative term for you to look for places to hunt. And it's the standard suspects, that western tier of counties across the South.
Yep.
But there's going to be pockets that are even better. And there's also going to be pockets that are perhaps a little worse because rainfall is spotty, habitat is spotty. But I'm going to term Minnesota's pheasant season is going to be on a par with last year's, which was pretty good. And some people I talk to think perhaps even a little better. But you also said it before when you said the habitat is what really matters in the end. And there might be more birds than there is habitat in some cases because, and we'll talk about this for other states, haying happened, emergency grazing happened. The places you hunt might not look, the places you always hunt might not look the same. So be prepared for that. If you don't scout, be prepared for what you find on opening day or when you take your first trip out.
Yeah, I would say that for all of bird country. Let's any locations in Minnesota that you would probably avoid?
As far as not having many birds?
Yep.
Nope. I'd say if you've got a spot, if you got a region where you hunt and you sort of know the country, there's going to be birds there. I mean, it might be in that good range if you think about Minnesota's pheasant forecast map. But even places like you said, that northwest corridor is much better pheasant hunting than you might think. Now it ebbs and flows with winters, but our winters have been mild.
Yep.
And big surprise, there's more pheasants up there.
Exactly.
That north of the Twin Cities range up towards that, Chisago and Pine counties, and that northern fringe, Mille Lacs County, there's birds up there too. The classics are going to be good. The thing about the classics, the western tier and the southwest, is they also get the pressure. Why? Because there are birds out there, and there is the public land. I mean, 1.2 to 1.5 million acres, depending on what you're counting, in the pheasant range. Minnesota has a richness of pheasant country. It has great habitat. We have things like our legacy amendment in Minnesota and Pheasants Forever, working with that and other partners. There's tons of places to hunt pheasants in Minnesota. There's tons of pheasants. We also have tons of hunters. We export the most hunters. We also have the most hunters in our state. I offer that we're going to have some good pheasant hunting this fall. You're going to have company, be prepared, be courteous, and have fun in Minnesota.
Yeah, I would echo what you've said. I have a lot of friends in the western part of the state, and they've all told me, like, they talk about it, but they don't tell anybody. It's like, sure, I won't tell anybody, I promise.
Yeah,
they've seen more birds driving to and from work this year than they have in many years, and that's something to be excited about. But we've got so many states to cover. We'll keep going, but I have one last question. I hunt deer and grouse up by War Road, way up in the northwest corner of the state, and I see more than one pheasant up there every year. And I know that sounds crazy, but are they in other parts of the state? With the map cuts off here around Otter Tail County, But
Yep.
it's not strange to see them further outside of that range, correct?
I think if you see them, you see them. I think it's probably a function of, the relatively mild winters we've been having, and
Hmm.
it's also a function of their great adaptability. I don't think they're much in huntable numbers in some of those places, but those range maps, when you look at like Pheasants Forever's map, I mean the DNR's map, it pretty much does, reflect the meaningful pheasant range. But it's fun to think of them way up there where you see them.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I wouldn't want to pull the trigger because it's like, no, make more, guys. Enjoy this area. Hope you hope you stick around for a while.
On the other,
Oh yeah, go
okay.
ahead.
No, I was going to say, on the other hand, how winter can be in War Road can take them out pretty fast. Maybe you should shoot
Maybe I
some and
should take
enjoy.
one down. Yeah.
Yep,
Well, I always wonder too, the people I'm with are like, I wonder if somebody maybe just released them, which
possible.
it's possible. Yeah. Yep. It's fun to speculate when you're out there. Let's move on. Let's head to the Dakotas. Last week I did a pretty deep dive on the state, and I mentioned that at the top of the show. You can go back and listen to that podcast if you want. So Carp, let's not spend too much time on North Dakota, but what are your observations? I know you love to hunt out there just like I do.
I love North Dakota. I mean, I'm going to swing through the state again on the prairie grouse extravaganza.
Hmm.
I think pheasant hunting will be challenging there this year. Will there be birds? Yes. Are you willing to work? I hope so. Are you there? But rightfully so, there's many different viewpoints on emergency haying and grazing. Producers need to their livestock fed, and they need their livelihoods. And part of the deal with programs like CRP and others is that it's an emergency backup for situations like this. Be ready for what you see in North Dakota. There's a lot bailed. There's habitat that's not there that used to be, and you're going to do a lot of driving, and you're going to work for some birds. And I would suggest start with the Pheasants Forever forecast, and also call ahead and start trying to figure out what's going on the ground in the places you like to hunt.
Hmm. Any specific region stand out as if you were going to pheasant hunt in North Dakota? Where would you go?
If I was going to hunt pheasants in North Dakota this year, and I probably won't get up there, this will be my second trip back for the prairie grouse. I would go to that southwest corner. I
Okay.
think that, I mean, I know it's toward the epicenter of the drought, but it's also the epicenter of North Dakota's pheasant range. I think the other area I would consider strongly would be the prairie coteau that swings up through the James River Valley and goes up through North Dakota, where there's a little more water, there's a little few more cattails. Uh, that would be my other, if I were going to go to North Dakota, and I may well after November.
Hmm.
That's where I would head, up where there's more wet and where there's more cattails.
Yeah, and last week we talked about it. Mike mentioned that area around Devil's Lake. The water levels in Devil's Lake continue to drop, which has created a couple 100,000 acres of those cattails, the habitat that pheasants like, and they're seeing numbers increase up there. So it's not like we talked about numbers, and when they say they're up 200% in a spot, that's going from 4 to 8 or 12,
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
down 5% in an area that might normally have 100. Now there's 95 there instead. So it's all relative, but the numbers are rising in that area around that Devil's Lake. And he also mentioned the northeast or the southeast corner of the state being an
So,
area that got a little bit of rain, and they're seeing more birds there too.
yeah, Southwest will traditionally has the most pheasants, and despite the drought, I think will still have it does have the most prime habitat. I think the Southeast could be good, but I think from the Southeast, the farther west you go up into that coteau where there's more water, might be the ticket.
Yep. Got it. Let's move south. South Dakota. What are we seeing there? I know that got just hammered by the drought, but that is the pheasant capital. So, regardless, I think people are going to South Dakota. Let's dig in.
Well, that, like you say, Travis, South Dakota is South Dakota. It's the pheasant capital. There is no doubt. And there is no doubt that drought hit hard. You can see our forecast is very detailed. So we don't have to go into every detail. Andrew Johnson, great friend of Pheasants Forever in South Dakota, one of our top writers, top reporters. He did the forecast and he did a bang up job. So I would suggest go to our forecast for some of the regional details. And the reason I say that, South Dakota, a couple of years ago, this was the second year of their suspension of their roadside counts. It's challenging in South Dakota, and this is no commentary, it's just factual. It's challenging without roadside counts to see where the birds went up or down or what's happening on the ground. It's hard to think, do I go to Northeast? Do I go in the classic in the middle? Is it the James River Valley? Is it that down in that winter area, the sort of the pheasant central? What do I do? What's going on in the Southeast? That makes it challenging in South Dakota to figure out, if you're a traveling hunter, a traveling public land hunter, where do I go? Part of the trick is you've just got to go where the public lands are. And you can use tools like Onyx Maps and South Dakota's tools, i.e. their printed map book, to find places to go. Then you have to find the birds. Like North Dakota, what's happened in South Dakota is be ready for the habitat to look different. You talked about it, Travis, about even in western Minnesota, habitat's looking different. It's maybe a little thinner. South Dakota is farther west. It was even, and it's not as humid anyway, and it was even drier. Emergency haying, emergency grazing was a reality in South Dakota. So you got to find habitat, and you're probably going to find birds. They probably had a fairly good hatch. We have to think about, though, what's looking ahead toward winter and next spring. And I know that's not part of the forecast, but as conservationists, it's part of what we think about is, what are the birds going to have this winter and what are they going to have next spring to make more birds? So pheasant hunting, I think it's going to be a good season in South Dakota. I think you're going to have to be prepared for what you see on the landscape, i.e. haying and grazing. And be prepared to find birds, but be prepared to do a little more work than you might think to get them. It might not be a 10-minute hunt in South Dakota. It's going to be a little longer than maybe what you're used to. That short of getting into sort of a regional breakdown, that's sort of what the South Dakota story is this year. The pheasant capital, obviously, but it's going to be a little more challenging than you might expect in South Dakota.
I think, I don't know, is it fair to say maybe it's Montana, the eastern half of Montana, and South Dakota, and then the southern half of North Dakota probably got hit the hardest by drought this year overall in the country?
Yes. Yeah. Except, and that's beside the West, the far West, which we did pheasant forecast for, but you're right. It was almost you use the phrase, the perfect storm. The perfect, not a storm, was the drought, and it almost mirrors the core of the pheasant range. So you are absolutely right. And we'll get into Nebraska and Kansas. You get a little farther south, it was a little moister. I think those states weren't as affected by drought, but you absolutely hit it. The real core of the pheasant range was the real core of the drought. And the fringe of the core, the Minnesotas, the Iowas, the Kansas and Nebraskas, weren't hit as hard by the drought, but they don't have as many pheasants as the core.
Right. Again, that goes back to the numbers being relative to the different regions. And if it's down
Yep.
5-10% in an area that traditionally has,
Yep.
200% more birds, then you still want to go. You still want to do it. And let's go to Montana. I've already hunted in Montana this year. It wasn't for pheasants. It wasn't open, but I sure saw them. I sure could have taken a few. They're there. Even though people are saying it got hammered, there's still birds there. What are we seeing in Montana?
I think you hit it on the head there. There's still birds. There's not as many as the peak years in Montana. It's been dry in Montana this isn't the first year.
Nope. Last year was unbelievably dry during the hunting season. And I remembered because we camped out there on the prairie and it was almost unbearable. The wind blowing the dust and every step you took, the topsoil would whip around you. And it felt like the Dust Bowl. That's what it felt like. Everywhere we went for 3 days, it was 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds. It was brutal and so dry. And I feel like they haven't got any rain since we left last October.
Yeah, and that sort of goes back to where we're starting in the intro to our podcast about year one of a drought. Yeah, maybe this isn't such a problem. Man, there's still birds around. Year 2 and 3, it starts to be a bigger problem, and that's what we're in Montana. Are there birds there? Yes. Is it localized? For sure. So what do? Montana is huge.
Mm-hmm.
So we break down their forecast by regions. Jack Hudson did it. He lives right on the Montana border. He's in Idaho. He did I'll say the word again, a bang up job reporting on what's going on in Montana. Montana doesn't do roadside surveys. It's what are people seeing on the ground? It's guesswork. It's footwork. I won't say guesswork. It's the footwork of talking to a wide variety of people. And I think it's going to be a challenge in Montana. There is no doubt. It was maybe even more than, or as much as Western North Dakota. The eastern half of Montana was the epicenter of the drought. So it's going to be a challenging year in Montana. Is this the dream year? Is this the year to take that dream hunt for Montana pheasants? It may not be. Is it the year to change your plans if you always go out there? Probably not the year to change your plans, but I'd also say be ready for, again, what you're going to see and how hard you're going to work for birds.
Yeah, and I think that's the main point of us wanting to really dissect this forecast is that if you're a traveling hunter like you are, Carp, and that I am, and we like to make plans and then hunt new areas, this might be a year you hunt a new area. Specifically, well, if there is a region in Montana, would you say it's the northern region that you'd want to go to?
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of what I feel like too.
I think Northeast, just as I said, where do you go in a storm? You go to the place where it's safe. And where is it safe? As we talked in North Dakota, the Southwest. Where is it safer in Montana? The Northeast, the classic range, where there's the most habitat, where there's the most birds to start. So yeah, I would say the Northeast.
Okay, let's talk some positivity now. Not that we have been negative, but we've really focused on the drought areas. But there's a good couple states that are in prime pheasant country that had pretty good moisture this year. Let's jump down to Nebraska. What are we seeing in Nebraska?
You said something very important, Travis, and that is let's talk some positivity here. Mm-hmm. And I want to be clear, like we talked, like, is this the year I'm going to take the big trip to Montana? No. Am I going to hunt in South Dakota? Dang right I am.
Yep.
So, it's not going to change any of my plans. I'm just ready. I'm maybe more than other folks. I'm a little more prepared for what I'm going to see. And that brings us to Nebraska. I think it didn't get hit as hard as other places. I was I think Nebraska is going to be fair to good this year. I think the farther north you go, the closer you are to Dakota, the drier it was. I think if I were to head toward Nebraska this fall, and if I do, it's going to be late season, uh, December, and perhaps beyond. I'm going to probably head southwest, panhandle, and also below that panhandle in the southwest corner. That's sort of, I think the panhandle will be good, but it doesn't have the numbers of pheasants that the Southwest has. And even though the Southwest is down a little bit from their surveys, it's still got the most numbers, relatively speaking. So I wouldn't hesitate to go to Nebraska. I'll probably be there myself this year. But once again, it didn't get hammered by drought, but there was an effect.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Anything in the northeast or southeast part of the state that jumps out to you?
I want to hunt that. I've heard good things about that Missouri River corridor, and I've been checking things out about going down to that country. It's not that far for me to drive to from Minnesota, and there's pheasants in Iowa right across the river.
Right.
Why shouldn't there be in northeast Nebraska?
Yeah.
So I don't like to hotspot places, but that's something I'm going to share, is that, if you don't want to go all the way to the Southwest, maybe take a chance in that eastern part of the state, especially if the habitat did not get hammered as hard by drought. And I don't think it did, because it's closer to Iowa. It's more humid. It's that eastern side of the pheasant range. And a lot of biologists will tell you there is a real difference as you head east in the pheasant range of what humidity in the air can do to keep habitat in a little better shape versus what happens the farther west you go. Think about how different Nebraska is from out in the panhandle and the sandhills to what it's like in northeastern Nebraska. It's like two different worlds.
Right. Yeah. Dew on the ground in the morning is a big difference maker in the world of those upland birds. It really is. Insects, everything. That moisture didn't fall out of the sky, but it was sitting in the grass in the morning when you wake up, and that can save a population, no doubt about it. Let's move east then. As long as you mentioned Iowa, a lot of people are talking about Iowa as kind of this rebound place. We've been talking about it for about 5 years now, 4 years, as it just keeps getting a little better each year, more and more people. Last year, I didn't hear quite as much buzz about the state from hunters as I did the previous 2 seasons, but I'm hearing again reports of people saying, oh yeah, Iowa's going to be good this year.
Yeah, I think you wanted to talk about positivity and bright spots, and there's going to be bright spots in every state. But as far as a forecast goes and state by state, I think Minnesota and Iowa are the bright spots. Minnesota, is a little north. We have a little more effect from winter. Iowa is almost in the sweetest of all spots, especially with this year. Less drought effect, though the north did get drought in the northwest, but I think it might have benefited the hatch more than it hurt the habitat. Although there are places I know in western Iowa that the CRP is gone. It's just gone.
Does that be the WeHop properties, walk-in hunter access?
Well, no, I do not. I confess I do not know about those, but I know in some of the counties in western Iowa that the CRP is, was hayed because it was needed to be hayed, and there's not much left. So you have to be ready for that. On the other hand, there was, I believe, a good hatch in Iowa. They do like Minnesota, they have an excellent roadside survey, a long time scientific process. And I think pheasant numbers are going to be good in Iowa. I think it's going to be that classic. If you picture a strip from northwest Iowa down to southeastern Iowa, that's where the pheasants are going to be. I think where there's habitat, there's going to be birds. And does Iowa yet rival South Dakota for pheasant numbers? No. Is it in the running? I got to be honest. I think it is. It's starting to get better and better. I think the only thing that's limiting Iowa in this day and age is habitat and public access. But if you get there, there's a lot more public access than you think. And I'm an Iowa hunter. I don't want to compete with people hunting all the public lands there, but Iowa's a great place. We got to talk about it. And it's going to be a good season in Iowa. I would say Iowa is going to be as good as anywhere this year.
Yep, and I'll just run through a couple of numbers. These are stats from their August roadside surveys. Northwest Iowa is up 6%, North Central Iowa up 34%, West Central Iowa up 25%, Central Iowa is up 25%, Southwest is down 33%, South Central is up 41%, Southeast is down 64%. So it's interesting how, in just that region, and maybe that's, less grass on the landscape in those regions, but right in the middle we're up 41% in South Central, and then West and Southeast we're down. But anyway, so like you mentioned, that's kind of your range there. Let's keep on moving down to Kansas. Let's go to Kansas next.
Kansas didn't have much. We're sort of a broken record on drought, but drought is reality. It affects everything. It affects the birds. It affects the hatch. It affects the habitat. Kansas didn't get hit hard by drought, maybe in the north part, a little bit of Kansas. I think it's going to be a pretty good hunting season in Kansas. Let's face it, Kansas has wonderful access with their WEHA program. There are many places to hunt. Not all places are created equal as far as pheasant numbers, but I think every region of Kansas is going to offer, according to its level, it's going to offer good hunting this year. I think they had virtually no winter across Kansas. That's one reason Kansas is so good, such a good pheasant state. Winter is practically, from all intents and purposes, not a factor. I think drought didn't hit hard this year. Hatch seemed good. Their surveys seemed on a line with other years. There was a decrease. Again, I don't think conditions were optimal. It was dry when they were surveying in August. I think, like Minnesota, pheasant numbers are going to be a little better than we think in Kansas. I wouldn't change my Kansas plans if I were a traveling pheasant hunter going to Kansas, and I'm not going to. Kansas is on my radar, likely for late season. And you work hard in Kansas in late season. I used a barometer as 2 years ago when I was there hunting in January, quail and pheasants. Maybe not in. I was in range where there are both quail and pheasants, and I shot 4 roosters in 5 days and some quail, and thought this is pretty good for the middle of January to be able to see this many pheasants, get a few old cagey roosters, find some coveys of quail. I consider that some good hunting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to get into that too. And I think we'll do a quail forecast too to help kind of take a peek at those conditions. But I'm hearing from quite a few people that quail numbers in Kansas are going to be potentially really good this year. So let's be optimistic there. And if you're looking for a place to switch your plans, maybe Kansas is one of those places. Let's take a look outside of the traditional pheasant range. But first, a quick message from a few of our partners. Besides a bird dog, a shotgun, and a good pair of boots, the Onyx Hunt app is one of the most valuable hunting tools that I take into the field every single day. I've been talking about the Onyx Hunt app since we started producing this podcast, and that's simply because I use it on every hunt. Their app tells me everything that I need to know about the lands that I want to hunt and the lands that we can all legally hunt together. If you've used it yourself, then you know that the Onyx Hunt app shows your location on planet Earth and clearly lays out the land boundaries. It also tells you information about the type of property that you're on, like state land or the block management lands that we hunted last week in Montana. It's ideal for scouting before the hunt and during a hunt to help put together patterns. The app also has new features this year that show you the kind of crops that are in fields, which obviously is a big deal for us upland bird hunters. If you hunt grouse in the Northwoods, there's a timber cut layer to help you find ideal habitat. If you're planning to hunt North Dakota this year like me, then there's a very important layer that has just been added to the app. For the first time, landowners in North Dakota can post their property electronically. Onyx has you covered to make sure you don't cross the line on property that has been posted electronically. Onyx maps can be used in areas without cell coverage too. From the palm of your hand, Onyx maps always help you to know where you stand. For generations, bird hunters have hit the fields carrying some form of a vest or game pouch on their backs. Sometimes the vests rip, tear, and fall apart. Other times they're downright uncomfortable. That's why Chief Upland designed a vest that's durable, comfortable, and fits your needs. Their new Upland vest is fully customizable to fit the size and shape of all hunters. Plus, you can decide where you want to attach your shell pouches and accessories. Birds can be front-loaded into the game pouch and they fit nicely in the back without sagging. That's a big deal because the weight disbursement on your back and shoulders won't tire you out even with a full pouch of birds. The vest itself is extremely lightweight, weighing only 2.56 pounds. The material is built out of Cordura fabric, which is the same waterproof fabric used in tactical military gear. You can confidently hunt with a Chief Upland vest in some of the world's toughest environments. Order your Chief Upland vest now to make sure that you're ready for opening day. Push further and hunt longer with the game-changing vest from Chief Upland, built for your pursuit.
Hey, upland hunters. If you're looking for a place to chase roosters this fall, you need to check out Huron, South Dakota. Here's why. The access to public hunting land is awesome. They have plenty of pet-friendly hotels for the hardest-working member of your hunting group. In addition, Huron is hosting a couple great events this hunting season, the first weekend of November. The Ringneck Festival, a 6-man competitive hunt which draws hunters from all over the country, and the Bird Dog Challenge. It's the opportunity you and your dog have been waiting for, complete with food, prizes, camaraderie, and so much more. The South Dakota pheasant season opens October 16th, so plan your hunting trip to Huron, South Dakota today. Check out the website and learn more at HuronSD.com.
All right, Tom, are you ready to look outside of the, I don't know, what we would call kind of the core of pheasant country? And let's maybe go to Oklahoma.
We had a good report from Oklahoma. I'd suggest taking a look at our pheasant forecast at pheasantsforever.org. I think according to our reporting, the breeding and brooding season was really good, and ample rain in Oklahoma makes for good habitat. It's a dry place. It's a windy place. They need rain. They got it. Oklahoma has limited pheasant country, but I think it's going to be good where the pheasants are. I think it's going to be a pretty good season. That would be my forecast for Oklahoma.
Got it. That sums it up pretty simply right there. And again, quail in Oklahoma. I think we'll dig into quail soon when we get more information about those birds. But you just, if you get into the right cover, your dog goes on point, and you could have a covey explode, and then rooster gets up right next to it, which is very enticing. Missouri. Let's head east and cover some of these eastern states. Missouri, and we'll go east from there.
Missouri's pheasant range is that north and northwest corner. Missouri has some really good public land. They manage some really nice public areas in the north for pheasants and quail. I think pheasant numbers are good there. Is Missouri a destination state for a pheasant hunter? No, you're probably going to go to one of the core states. Are there pheasants in Missouri? You bet. And I think it's going to be a decent season in the north of Missouri. Once again, like Oklahoma, if I were to go to Missouri, I'd focus on the quail and take a bonus pheasant. But I'm a pheasant hunter, and I'd be there. If I was going to Missouri or Oklahoma, or I'd be like, I want it because I love quail, as you well know.
Yeah.
I want to hunt quail, and man, I'm not passing up any ringneck that goes up,
Right.
but that's the beauty of it. Like you said, for Oklahoma, you can be hunting quail, and you might get a rooster. 7.5 shot takes down a rooster just fine.
Yes, indeed. I've done it, and I've
Yep.
seen you do it, I think, if I remember correctly.
Well, to go on the side, I hunt, if I'm using lead, I use 7.5 for almost everything these days. So, but that's a topic for another podcast.
Well, yeah, it is. But to be honest, that prairie storm, it changes the way hunters hunt. I mean, they're using sub gauges because the loads are so potent. And every time I give somebody a box of prairie storm that's never shot it, they're like, is it really worth it? And it's a little bit more. And I say, here, go ahead. And they
Yep.
drop a bird stone cold at a distance that they have maybe had issues hitting or having a runner. And they're like, holy crap, that stuff is legit. And I told you,
Yeah.
it's that good. Let's go to Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. Let's sum those states up. Did they get hit by the drought?
No, in fact, Illinois and I keep pretty good tabs on Illinois. I have some good friends down there.
Mm-hmm.
They got almost, they were in a rain belt for a while, and then it got dry. So I think Illinois is going to be good. Illinois' pheasant country is, spotty in that certain regions, and they largely relate to Pheasants Forever activity and chapters, are good. Northern Illinois has birds where there's habitat, especially that Northwest. There's places in the East and East Central. The best is I sort of call it that magical triangle, that McLean, Ford, LaSalle, Livingston counties, Bloomington, and then there's not a lot of public land, but there's good hunting. I've seen pheasant. If you can believe it, I've seen fields in that region of Illinois that rival Iowa and South Dakota for bird numbers.
Wow.
But
well, we've talked about it for a few years and coming down there to actually film a show with you in Illinois, and haven't made it happen yet, but it's something I want to see as well.
Yeah, it's so locally, I think there's going to be some good pheasant hunting in Illinois this year. Once again, winter doesn't impact you so hard, but what you need there is the habitat. Where there's habitat, there's birds in Illinois, and that's what sort of drives you to that Golden Triangle area. Also, northwestern Illinois to some extent, I think, which I hunted when I was a kid, growing up in southwestern Wisconsin, especially now with some good CRP coming back in those areas. So. Is Illinois a pheasant powerhouse? No. Does Illinois have pheasants? You bet.
Yeah.
So
and they have a lot of pheasant hunters because a lot of them travel west, and maybe some of them don't have to because there are birds in their state. It's just, again, land access. That's always a big thing.
Yep.
How about Ohio?
I think Ohio, traditionally in Ohio, the habitat is all related to some of these watersheds, particularly the Scioto watershed. CRP is the name of the game in Ohio. We have to get some more CRP in the ground there. But that Scioto River has a CREP similar to South Dakota has a CREP, and they're signing up new landowners. There's a lot of land there, and there's also some public access. I think Ohio, where there's pheasants, is going to have a pretty good season. Once again, you're south of that winter range, or you're south of the winter impact that it can have on pheasants. So Ohio, I think, is going to be a good season.
How about I kind of lump Michigan and Wisconsin together, and it's funny because I've been on grouse hunts up there, and driving on the road, I see a pheasant, standing in the trees, no grass around him. I just laugh to myself, "What are you doing here, guy? You're in the wrong habitat." But there's birds in those two states. What are we seeing this season for those two states and expectations?
Well, for Michigan, Michigan has a great Pheasants Forever presence. It's a very important state with us. They do great work there. The chapters are engaged. They work hard. And Michigan, has like most Midwestern states, has a storied past in pheasant hunting, and I think a pretty bright future. The more we can get those public lands and those grasslands on the landscape, and it's happening in Michigan. I think Michigan is going to have a good season. Our basic message in Michigan is where you find grass, you're going to find birds.
Yeah.
And that's why Pheasants Forever and CRP and public lands and getting more public lands in the southern part of the state. Not only that, the northern part of the Upper Peninsula, there's more public lands up there. If we want to keep making more pheasants in Michigan, it all pushes into that southern part of Michigan. The Michigan Pheasant Restoration Initiative has been very successful. It needs to keep chugging and chugging along to keep getting us more pheasants in Michigan.
Sounds good. You mentioned the storied history of that state. Let's talk about the introduction of the very first pheasant in America. Let's head way, way, way west and look at some of those states: Idaho, Oregon, Washington. What are we seeing in that kind of corner of the country?
Well, to sort of glom those together, as the Northwest, I think it's going to be tough in that Northwest. The reporting we get, they don't survey their pheasants much out there, so it's hard. You don't have scientific data to go by. And that makes it challenging to forecast, but you do have a lot of folks to talk to, and you do have habitat to look at. And drought, as we talked earlier in this forecast, hit hard out there, as hard as in some cases, perhaps even harder than Montana. And you can also glom California into this group. There's pheasants in California.
Yep.
They're meeting some hard times in eastern Washington and eastern Oregon. There's still birds in those prime areas, but I think it's going to be tough. And Idaho, we have similar reporting that it's going to be a challenging season, and the dry conditions related to hatch and habitat are part of that. We all know Idaho as a heaven for all these different upland bird species. Yeah. Ringnecks, are meeting some challenging times there. They're not native. They get hit hard when drought hits, unlike some of the native birds, i.e. the prairie grouse.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like the pheasant gets as much respect in that Northwest and western part of the country as some of the other upland birds, or do hunters if they ranked the birds in order of what they care about the most or want to hunt the most, where do pheasants fall for them out there?
For the people in the Northwest?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think because pheasants have declined in the Northwest, I mean, let's face it, Oregon and eastern Washington, like most places in pheasant country, have experienced a steady decline related to habitat. And I'll bring it back. That's what Pheasants Forever is all about, bringing that upland habitat back. I think the pheasant has in a parallel fashion declined in popularity as that happened out west. There are still great supporters of the pheasant out west, but I think you probably hit a vein in that the pheasant is a little de-emphasized these days in those places of the Northwest.
When I think of Wyoming, I think of sage grouse. I think of a variety of grouse, actually. You don't hear a lot about pheasant hunting in Wyoming, but there are birds there. What are we seeing for this season in Wyoming? And then let's, after that, slide down to Utah and Colorado.
Drought was hard in Wyoming. Wyoming's a challenging pheasant state anyway, because it's just, unless you're in one of the major river bottoms with irrigated cropland habitat flanked by, fringes and edges, and think drainage ditches or grazing land, grasslands. it's pretty hard for a pheasant to make a living in Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
And drought on top of it has made that doubly hard. So, Wyoming isn't going to be your pheasant hunting destination trip, but there are pheasants there, but you got to for the most part, you have to have access to ranch land to get meaningful numbers of pheasants. Similar to Montana, if you can get on those places, there's
Mm-hmm.
birds, there's no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a tough place for a public land hunter to go find pheasants, wild pheasants.
I was talking with a friend in Colorado, and he said he's probably seen the most rain that they've seen there in a long time this year, and their grouse numbers up in the mountains are reflecting that. What does that mean for their pheasant population?
I think Colorado is sort of a wild card. It's that eastern part of the, when we talk Colorado, we're talking eastern part of the state.
Yep.
And our forecast was mixed from Colorado. Our reporting was the dry, hot and dry in the eastern part of the state, very different from the mountains. Once again,
Yeah.
we talk about is it's going to make it a challenging season out there, and they've had some challenging conditions in that eastern part of the state. So I think it's going to be a fair season in eastern Colorado. Once again, it all comes down to habitat.
Yep. And same for Utah.
Yeah, and Utah's, centralized once again in their river valleys. I've shot a lot of pheasants in Utah, but the range is limited. It's largely up in that north region is the big area, the edges of the Salt Lake, and then up into the Cache Valley. There's more pheasants in Utah than you think, but there's not as many as they used to be. Once again, where there's habitat, there's birds in Utah. Getting at them on places that aren't public land is one of the challenges.
Got it. Well, I think we're wrapping it up with Texas, the last of the states that I don't think we've talked about yet. There are pheasants in Texas. Ron Scherer will tell you that because he's seen them, he's missed them, and he actually hit one or two of them. So what are we seeing in Texas?
Our reporting is they had a real mild winter. They had one sort of, we'll call it episode with some blow, but we all know pheasants can survive a week of low temperatures and without any snow. It's almost a joke. It's like that's called spring in North Dakota.
Right.
So pheasants came through the winter fine. They had some good moisture. Think about Oklahoma wet and the panhandle of Texas, which is good for habitat. So I think panhandle of Texas, as far as our reporting goes, it's going to be a pretty good season. I think there's going to be, if you hunt pheasants in Texas, there's every reason to be cheeky about your prospects this year. Habitat's in good shape.
My goodness, Carp, you are just a wealth of pheasant hunting knowledge. We just covered almost the entire country and all of pheasant country, I should say. And I know we could have dug in further. I guess we just wanted to give an overview and look at the state of pheasant hunting. Overall, how do you feel overall in America where we're at today for pheasant numbers, pheasant hunters? You feel good about it? Do you feel like we could do better? What's your take?
We should never feel good about what we have. And that's not because positive things aren't happening. Positive things are, but we have so much farther to go for conservation and for upland habitat in this country. We all think about and dream back to the soil bank days when millions of pheasants were shot everywhere. North Dakota, Iowa, South Dakota, Minnesota, Kansas, Nebraska. Habitat was everywhere and pheasants were everywhere. We're not going to get into all the reasons why the habitat has gone away, but now is coming back bit by bit and piece by piece and day by day and effort by effort between Pheasants Forever and partners and all the other people that care about habitat. So I feel good about pheasants where we have them, but we need more places to bring habitat back. And not only is it not just for the sake of habitat and for wildlife, but think about the things that the habitat, that grassland habitat does for the world in general,
Right.
for
Water and yep.
soil quality, water quality, efforts in Iowa like their wetland restorations and trying to sequester the flow of water off the landscape and pool it up and let what's in that water filter out before you send it downstream into the creek, into the river, into the Mississippi, into the Gulf of Mexico. It's so huge, but it's also so small and simple. Put more prairie, put more grassland, more meadows. It's grasslands. Put more of that on the landscape. You're going to have more pheasants. You're going to have more bees. You're going to have more butterflies. You're going to have more white-tailed deer. You're going to have more bobolinks, my favorite songbird. And I'm just a prairie geek. I'm a pheasant geek, but it's all about habitat. And I'm not happy. Nobody should be happy with where we're at as far as getting habitat on the landscape, but do something about it.
Right.
Join Pheasants Forever. Get active. Let your voice be heard when Pheasants Forever asks you to get on the phone and call your legislator and bomb them like we just did as we started our effort to build a North American Grasslands Conservation Act that we're going to get done. And it's going to make a huge difference for everything we've talked about, from putting pheasants on the ground for me and you to shoot, to making a place for bobolinks to nest, and helping monarch butterflies, and you name it.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for the last couple of weeks, and I wanted to ask you about that next, but you already hit on it. The North American Grassland Conservation Act. How do you feel about the pace that it's moving forward? Are we getting enough members to step up and participate? What can we do better?
We feel good. I think it's two things. One is numbers speak, and numbers of members in Pheasants Forever makes a difference. If you're not a member and you're a pheasant hunter, or you're an upland hunter and you hunt public lands, it sounds sort of harsh, but I use this word. It's time to not be a freeloader anymore. It's time to help and to pay your way and to be a part of Pheasants Forever. Even if you don't get active in a chapter, and we want you to, we need you on the rolls, on the membership roll, because your number matters, you being a part of this. And that relates to the Army. We had an Army, I think we had, I don't know what the exact number was. It was in the tens of thousands of emails and phone calls from across the country to legislators as this North American Grasslands Act became introduced. Legislators pay attention when they get people contacting them and saying, there's a Grasslands Act coming along. I want you to vote for it because it's important for wildlife, for hunting heritage, for pheasants, for water quality and soil quality, and the whole shebang of what upland habitat is all about. And so to get back to your question, we feel good that we're doing everything we can, and we're engaging the members of Pheasants Forever to be pests. That's what we have to be. We have to be pests. We have to bother people. And when Pheasants Forever says, you got to get out there and you got to, get on your get on your keyboard and tap, tap, tap for 5 minutes and send it out. Or get on a phone call and make a call and talk to that representative in the office and be the 14th person and the 15th and the 16th or the 16th that's calling that person, and have them tell that House of Representatives person that we had 23 calls today on this Grasslands Act. Maybe you better vote for it.
There you go. I like it. Yep. If there's anything that we can do on our end too, we're on board to do that as well. You have so much knowledge about pheasant country. I appreciate you taking a little bit of time. I hope the rest of your season goes very well. There's a lot of other questions I wanted to get to, but once again, you've got to get going and we got to get going too. But I have one last question for you, Carp. If your boss says, Tom, You have 1 week off during the hunting season this year. I want you to go hunting in the best place in America for pheasants. Where are you going to go and when?
Oh my God.
It's a tough one, probably. I know you got
Is
100
it
places you want to go. I'm just trying to say,
okay?
like, based on what we've just
I
covered
I got to ask you this: that is it this year, or is it just a sort of a general any year?
this year, because of the conditions that everybody has to face against this year.
If my answer might surprise you, but here's
Hold
what I'm
on.
going to say.
You're going to say Minnesota.
Yep. I gotta be honest. I'd take a week and I'd do a little road trip in western Minnesota, and
Mhm.
I would start up in that North Country, that Otter Tail County you mentioned, and that where there's supposedly not going to be any pheasants.
Yep.
And I'd take a 1 week road trip down the western edge of the state, and I'd come across the bottom into Worthington, and I'd see my friend Scott Rawl,
Yep.
and I'd finish up with him, and I would hunt every day in a different place. That's what I would do if Bob St. Pierre gave me a week off free. And I'd even bring a photographer along and put it in the magazine. So if Bob's listening, I want that week off, and that's what I'm going to do. Okay, and the other part of your question, thanks, Travis.
Yeah.
And
I'm maybe I'm going to tell my boss I'm coming with you.
yeah, we should do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
When would I do it? I would do it the first week of December.
I almost predicted that. I was just going to stop you again and say, I bet you're going in December too. I could have nailed down. I can sense the pheasant information in your mind, Carp. So first week
Well,
in December. I love late season bird hunting. I know you do too. The challenge is there, but the hunter numbers go down. The crops are in. It makes sense, right?
yep, and your early December, you can still you might not be in the Arctic deep freeze. You have a chance of being in maybe teens or 20s at night, and maybe those magical 30s in the daytime or something like that. So that's what I do, Travis. You made me commit, and I did.
I'm sending a text to Bob as soon as we hang up that you're going to be taking the
Yeah.
first week of December off. Carp, I appreciate you helping us get a grip on where we're at this year. Always go hunting if you have the opportunity. Don't miss the chance. Don't take anything we've said as a reason not to go. In fact, I think you should go in spite of anything and enjoy it. It's going to be a great season, even if you'd come home empty-handed, right?
That's right. It's getting out there, being with your friends, your family, and your bird dog.
That's right.
That's the biggest thing to me. Any day I spend with Lark, with my little bird dog, is a day well spent. And at the end at the end of the day, she doesn't care a hoot if we get a bird or not. Sure, she wants to find them and dig them up and point them, but she just wants to be out there running free. And that's what I want to be out there doing, walking free and being out in the places that pheasants call home. And get out there and hunt. You said it, Travis. Get out there and hunt, and commit yourself to the habitat mission that we all need to have places to hunt.
Yeah, it's been, I think, 3 years since I hunted behind Lark, and we're due for another one. If you are looking for more information, Carp has put together a tremendous state-by-state breakdown. Head to pheasantsforever.org. You'll see on their header the pheasant forecast. You'll learn about that. The Grassland Initiative is also there where you can learn more. You matter, and you can make a difference. We all are in it together. Next week, I'm going to be somewhere on top of a mountain in Colorado. I'm going to try to record a podcast from the mountaintop and get it to you and get it to Brandon. He will not be on the mountain with me, but I will somehow find internet and get it to him so he can post that episode. I'll tell you more about it. You'll have to tune in next week. Carp, once again, thank you. And thank you to all of our sponsors for making this show possible. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank, reminding you to take the time to introduce someone new to the field.